Well, good afternoon, Quad Racer gang. How's everybody out there doing? It's a Friday afternoon in the freezing cold desert. We got some ugly weather coming, and unfortunately canceled a nice dune trip that we had planned to Dumont Dunes. So I guess, back to work for a little bit. But what I wanted to do is shoot another Q-tip video on, something that's plagued these Quadzillas for a long time, and there's really been a lot of information or misinformation on the internet. And that is regarding the footpeg situation on the Quadzillas. So here we go. First off, we've got the camera here. What I've done is I've taken a left and a right Quadzilla footpeg and I've bolted them together with the same bolt so you can see what I'm talking about. So what we have, this is the front side and this is the back side. And if you look at this, with the bolts in the same holes, you could see that not only are these foot pegs offset, but they're also twisted differently on a slightly different axis. One is actually tilted. So, long story short, it's just about the only quad on the planet that ever did that. Why? I do not know. I even talked to the quad father himself, and what it boiled down to is that, some Japanese engineer on the left foot peg didn't talk to the one on the right, and that's how it ended up. So these foot pegs have a few issues. They bend, as seen by these. These are both bent. Also, the original Kickstarter stop is only about this wide. And what happens is on many of the Quadzillas, when the Kickstarter gets a little worn, it gets stuck behind this stop. Also, the foot pegs sit really high, and ergonomically, if you're over 5'5", those things are just up high and they're just not as comfortable. It makes you feel like a jockey. And, that's because of the Japanese test riders. They were probably, the tallest was 5'5". So that's kind of how things ended up the way they are. So there's a couple ways to attack this issue and solve it. What we like to do is, and let me back up. The other issue is they're fairly narrow. And so there's not a lot of surface area for big guys. So here's a couple of things that we do. So one, to illustrate, I just took a set of 250 pegs just to demonstrate. You can see these things line up exactly the same. These are mirror image, much like the same as an LTR 450 peg like we have on Pokey here. Pretty much every peg on the planet is mirror image. So there's a couple things that can be done. The way we do them is we'll straighten them, cut them, lower them. The original foot peg. We've done modified Z400 and LTR 450 pegs. Quite a bit of work to do. But let me show you. We're going to take the camera over here over to Zillas. And Zilla's got a set of foot pegs that will illustrate what can be done and what I would recommend in most cases. So this is Zilla's foot pegs. You can see they're stock pegs. We just cut them, put them in a fixture and lowered them. But also, you can see we extended the Kickstarter stop. So that way when the Kickstarter comes down, it hits right in the middle of that stop. And if you don't do this, and you put some other foot pegs on, without a stop, you're going to end up with a hole in your clutch cover. No good. Also, if you'll notice, if we get up on the top here, you can see that both these foot pegs are lined up. They're square, they're straight, they're symmetrical. And so basically, you can cut the foot pegs, cut the brackets, lower them, weld them, and extend the foot peg stop. That's what we'd recommend doing. If they're bent, you just heat them up, bend them up straight before you do all that. Fair amount of work, but a good result. So No other foot pegs, no matter what anybody tells you, are going to bolt up on your bike and be symmetrical, be even and be tilted in the right position. But here's the good news for you other riders. Here's an LTR 450 peg right here. You know, it's got a wider base, it's stronger, it's nice. I've done a couple sets of these. And so what we're doing right now is we're developing a package where we're going to make lowered LTR 450 style pegs on the Zilla with the proper extended kickstarter stop and all that. And so that's basically it. Gamazilla's got it set up. You know, all the bikes that I do, they all have lowered pegs. Done tons of customers. You can ask any customer what you think. The ergonomics, all of it, are great. It's not that hard to do. You could do it yourself. You just have to remember, these things are asymmetrical. They're not mirror image. And trying to bolt on other foot pegs, you know, if you got one leg shorter than the other, or maybe your ankle's twisted, yeah, I guess maybe they'll work. But I wouldn't recommend it. If you want to do a clean job and be satisfied with results, that's what I do. But I want you to stay tuned, because shortly we will have the LTR foot peg setup on the Zillas released. Not going to be a major deal. We've done a few sets, but I wanted to make a setup that is relatively simple and relatively effective. And so, you know, here you go. This is what you had, and that's what we have. And we got a few other things coming up shortly, but that's all for today. We'll talk to you folks later.